And I don't represent him, his family, or his county anymore. But Sheriff Ed Prieto, thank you very much for coming over from Yolo County. Just a great guy, great veteran. Thanks for your service then, and thanks for your service now.
It was my pleasure. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it.
I can't tell you how proud I am of all of you. Kind of the theme today is immigration reform. And we're getting closer and closer to getting this done. And it's because of fantastic people such as you today, and many more of you across the country. And it is so critically important that we do this. You know it. I'm kind of carrying coals to Newcastle talking to you about it. You know how important this is. And I know because of the job that I have, but I also know because of my roots. You know, I'm the grandson of an Italian immigrant. And thinking back when I've seen some of the things that have happened, I could not imagine my grandfather being picked up and being sent back to Italy with his first generation Italian wife and second generation Italian daughter, my mother, being left here by herself, by themselves, on their own. And the idea of that is just appalling to me. I couldn't imagine it happened back then, and quite honestly, it's appalling to think that it could happen again today. And the fact that we have this sort of situation in our country today is just absolutely indefensible. We need to get immigration reform done because it's the right thing to do. But if there's folks out there who don't understand it's the right thing to do, there's a whole bunch of other reasons we need to get it done. It saves money, it grows the economy, it grows jobs, it provides workers that we need in this country, and we need to make sure that we have the ability to unite families no matter where they're from or where they're living. It's just that important. And I'll tell you not only how important it is, but how close I believe we are to getting this done. You know, the labor unions across the United States of America and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce agree on this. Now, I can't remember the last time that those two entities agreed on anything. You know, I don't think you could get them to agree on what time it is, and yet they understand how important this is. Now, the U.S. Senate understands how important this is. They passed a bill with 68 votes. And talk about people who can't agree on what time it is. You know, you can't get 60 votes on anything in the U.S. Senate. Yet every Democrat in the U.S. Senate and a handful of Republicans voted for that measure to put it out. Now, the stumbling block is here in the House of Representatives. And there's no reason that we should have that stumbling block, because there is a wide range of folks who, both Democrats and Republicans, that support doing comprehensive immigration reform. And we've got a bill. I'm a co-author of the bill, and I think everybody here who lives in our district knows that I've been a co-author of immigration reform since the day I got to Congress. Be it the bill for the Dreamers, the ag bill, whatever it was, I've been there, and I'm a co-author on this bill as well. And the difference this time is we've got quite a good number of Republicans who are on the co-author list on this bill, and it's because of two things. One, there's a bunch of people just like all of you across the country that know how important this is. And they're talking to their representatives, and they've emphasized the importance, and they've convinced those representatives of theirs that this is important. And there's one other reason I am convinced that we are as close as we are, and that's because we've had a champion on the issue of immigration reform who is absolutely working his fingers to the bone. And when we get done, I don't want him to have bony fingers. I want to have a comprehensive immigration reform bill on the president's desk so we can sign it into law. Yeah. So not only am I honored to be here with all of you, I'm honored to be here with that person before his fingers get worn to the bone. But Luis Gutierrez from Illinois is somebody who I met when I first got to Washington, D.C. We're friends, we're colleagues. We serve on one committee together. We serve on the Intelligence Committee together. And he does great work. He's passionate, and he's dedicated to making sure this happens. And without getting anybody in my party in trouble, I want to tell you the degree of dedication and passion that he has put him toe-to-toe with the President of the United States of America on this issue. And he's not afraid to back down. He knows this is important. He knows we need to do it, and he'll go all the way to the mat to make sure it's done with you, me, or the President of the United States. And I'm glad that he's that kind of guy. As I referenced already my time in Vietnam, I oftentimes gauge someone by whether or not I'd want to spend time in a foxhole with them. I tell you, Luis Gutierrez has your back, and he's got our back on immigration reform. He's a great ally. He's a great friend. So please give a warm Sonoma, Napa, YOLO.
It is really a wonderful pleasure to be here with you this evening. I'm so happy Mike extended the invitation to be here. I want to first of all say hello to all of the new friends that I've made here, and to all of the folks that joined me 3 years ago out at St. Helena, right? Yeah. Back in Mike's parish, where he was baptized. We were there, and to all of you who've come from Napa, good to see you again, my friends. We're in a much better place today. Back then, Mike, we had the dreamers in caps and gowns. Today they have work permit, Social Security card, and they are closer to legalization than ever before. A lot of people always say, well, I'm frustrated, I'm disillusioned. How many more marches? As many as we have to go to. Yeah. Today they deported 1,100. Yesterday. Tomorrow. The Senate passed the bill last June. 300,000 people have been deported since the Senate passed the bill. So we have to think about the tens of thousands of children who have been left orphaned. That's not an exaggeration. And if they haven't been left orphans of a parent or a mom, they've been left orphaned of a country, the United States of America, because they've left deported with their moms and their dads and their American citizens. And that's not the American way. And that's what Mike and I are working to reverse and to change. So we're tired of watching the crushing, just the crushing blows that our immigrant community takes each and every day because of the deportation. Now, a lot of people say, well, Luis, they just have to do it the right way. Well, you know, what Mike and I want to do is create the right way. I mean, when people used to come through Ellis Island, there was a way to get here. Today, there is no way. And that is part of the problem that we confront as a nation. And if anybody knows better than you, I don't know who they are. Because in Napa and in Sonoma, you know one thing clearly. And that is that the food that we cherish and love and nourishes us are going to be picked by foreign hands here in our country or picked by foreign hands somewhere else. And I prefer that it be picked here with decent wages and decent working conditions and giving them the kind of respect. I'm tired of my colleagues. So what's the difference between Democrats and Republicans? There are fundamental differences. They want to do immigration reform and deny citizenship to people. We want to do immigration reform and provide the same opportunity that America has always provided to newcomers that have come here. And that is to integrate yourself fully into the American dream. They want to make a distinction. They want to say, well, if you're in the high-tech industry, you're a scientist, an engineer, a mathematician, come and bring your wife and your children. And I'm happy they're doing that. But I say, if you come here to work the land, my mom and my dad, under their conditions, my mom and dad couldn't have come to this country. I bet you your grandparents couldn't have come to this country. What would this country have been? Somebody had to work the steel mills and the coal mines. Somebody had to do back-breaking work that maybe didn't take a lot of education from a scholastic point of view, but took a lot of determination and a lot of will and a lot of foresight. So all I'm saying is the workers of today are workers of today. And I don't want at the end of the day to go to my grocery counter and eat the food and know that I haven't paid respect to those who have brought that food. You know, we have a lot of issues of national security, and Mike and I work on the Select Committee on Intelligence, and so we know the threats. And many times when we talk about those issues, we talk about them in terms of security, in terms of our energy supply, right? Well, what about our food supply? We are the breadbasket of the world. Of the world. Don't we want to guarantee, and shouldn't we, for those that do the kind of work, everybody says, well, I said, who what? Look, it was a good thing this week in the news. They said 80% graduation rate to all the educators here. Thank you. No, we're getting back to 80%. When I graduated in 1971 from high school, most kids left high school and went to work at Zenith, Motorola. Helen Curtis went to work somewhere. That's not the more and more. And Latinos are the fastest growing group of population group in colleges across this nation. So what do we know? That we have a better educated, more sophisticated workforce each and every day. But somebody's got to do the work. Somebody's got to do that other work that doesn't take a college degree. Somebody's got to do it. And you want to know something? We should be as respectful of them as we are of everyone else. I was looking at my colleagues and said, you send your kids, and you haven't done this so they could go and work the fields, but somebody worked the fields. And here's the thing. They do it with joy and happiness. They don't wake up bitter and angry. They do it with joy and happiness. And shouldn't we, with the same joy and happiness, embrace them? I see it in meatpacking plants. And listen, everybody, we can't defend and protect our women in the armed forces of the United States. We see the hearing, thousands of cases of sexual abuse and exploitation. And if that's happening in the armed forces of the United States to American citizen women, what do you think is happening in the fields and in the meatpacking plants across this country to immigrant women? This is a shame on our nation. We need to fix this, and we need to fix it now, whether they're in meatpacking plants or wherever they are in this nation. I know that when I go to church on Sunday, my pews sit the undocumented. And the Republicans have to come to understand something. Every time they criminalize them, every time they stigmatize them, they do the same thing to me, and I know they do it to you. We feel the same pain and criminalization. When you're in Arizona, they don't distinguish between who they're going to ask their paper for. They just look at you and say, llegó ayer, llegó hoy, ¿cuándo llegó? ¿En qué año? Y dame tus papeles. And so they have the famous show me your papers law. And you know, and Janet Brewer, what a cruel woman. Huh? No, but think about it. Young kids graduating from high school, in college, apply for DACA, and she says, they're not driving in my state. Why? You mean they can't drive their folks and their little brothers to the hospital when they're sick? To buy groceries? To go to school? To better themselves? No, there are always those forces. But the good news is, as Mike said earlier, we're overcoming those forces. 3 years ago, we were in a very different position. I remember in 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010, Mike was there. There were 257 Democrats in the House of Representatives. We could not pass comprehensive immigration reform. As a matter of fact, there was little or no interest on the part of Democrats to pass a bill in the House of Representatives. I'd go around and say, let's pass a bill. They say, go find yourself 40 Republicans. That's what the president say that to me. Well, Luis, when you find 40 Republicans, come and let me know. And then there could be a little fairness and justice for your immigrant community. And I'd look around and say, but we're in the majority. The fact is, we never had 218 votes. What's the good news? There are 218 votes. This is the first time in 20 years. Mike knows as well as I do, we've done a lot of work in the Democratic caucus. I think we're 203 strong. 199 have already signed the bill. That is incredible unity. Okay? We're 257. I don't think we could get 199. So from a smaller group, right, we have a much stronger grouping of people. Republicans. I had Paul Ryan. I invited him. I saw Paul Ryan in the gym. I know, before you go, I saw Paul Ryan in the gym. It was a couple of weeks after the election. And I said, Paul, you know, I did everything I could to make sure you were never vice president of the United States. And he said, I did everything I could to make sure you were still in the minority in the House of Representatives. And I said to him, I said, it seems like we both did our jobs well. I said, can we work on immigration reform, Paul? And he said to me, he said, Luis, I'm going to work on immigration reform with you, but I want to work on immigration reform with you, not from a political perspective, but from a moral perspective. He said, you're a Catholic, I'm a Catholic, and as Catholics, we should never allow a permanent underclass of people to live in this nation. He came to Chicago 4 months later, the same day of the bombings in Boston, when it would have been easy to simply say, oh, we can't have this. He came to Chicago, and he said he was for comprehensive immigration reform with a pathway to citizenship. He continues to work. Now, many of you say, well, why don't we know about it? Because I barely mentioned him. Because in Washington, D.C., bipartisanship is something that everybody always extols the values of bipartisanship, but it's very rarely rewarded. And that's part of the problem in Washington, D.C. And on the issue of immigration reform, let's face it, Democrats have to understand that we are in the minority as we approach this issue and negotiate this issue in the House of Representatives. Yes, we're in the majority. You wanted a different and a better bill? We should have done it when we were 257 strong.
Exactly.
That's right.
The fact is Republicans are in the majority. And what Republicans have to understand is that there was a national referendum in 2012. And the Republican candidate said he was for self-deportation, he vetoed the DREAM Act, and he loved Arizona's SB 1070, and that was Romney. And Barack Obama got 51% of the vote, and he said he was for comprehensive immigration. So we already had a national debate and referendum, and that's what the Republican Party has to understand. They are going to become a party of regions and states and localities if they don't deal with the issue of comprehensive immigration reform today. Every day, 2,000 Latinos turn 18. I know some of you are thinking, how many of them are citizens? I'm only talking about American citizens turning 18 every day. And they turn 18 angry at a party that denies their family members. Everybody, oh, pero ¿por qué? Pero si son indocumentados no tienen papeles. Porque son nuestros primos, son nuestros hermanos, son nuestras abuelas, son nuestros amigos. Fui a la escuela con ellos, camino con ellos, los quiero, los amo. Y yo quiero que este país los trate bien. Y si tú no los tratas bien, nunca votaré por tu partido porque trataste a mi prójimo de una manera mala. Y ese es el espíritu de nuestra comunidad. When the Republican Party comes to understand that we're all in it together, that this isn't some kind of caste society, que los indocumentados están aquí y el resto estamos acá. Que realmente estamos todos unidos y confundidos juntos. ¿Ah? Como un queso que está derretido, ¿verdad? That's who we are. So we're in a much better place than we've ever been before. So when your congressman asked me to come out here, I said, I want to come and talk to the leadership and come and tell you the good news, that we're in a much better place. And all that has to happen now, we don't need one Republican who who feels it's too hard, right? To vote. We don't need them. We already got Denham from your state of California and Valadao. We got Diaz-Balart from Florida. We had 4 Republicans from my state, Aaron Schock, and 3 other Republicans just last week with former Speaker Hastert say they're for comprehensive immigration reform. I can go down the list And I can tell you 18 Republicans who have publicly announced this week, Peter King in New York said, I'm for a pathway to citizenship. We should deal with this issue. Que nos den el voto. Just let democracy flourish for one day. Set aside your partisanship. Set aside politics. And do the right thing that the American people want. And we have the votes. And nobody's arm has to be twisted. What a unique concept. That people get to vote their values and their conscience in the Congress of the United States. So I came to tell you thank you. That didn't happen by accident. That happened because we were consistent and persistent in our demand for justice for our immigrant community. And today we are ready to reap the rewards of our good work. But we're not there yet. We have to demand that the Republicans give us a vote. And if they give us a vote, there will be a bill on the president's desk that will get this done. Let me just end with this. I'm going to go, I want you to think, I'm going to go home. Rebecca's going to take me to the airport. I'm going to be on the 10:30 flight. Sometime at 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to get to my house. My wife and my daughters and my grandson knew that Grandpa and Papi was coming home. Doesn't it just break your heart to know that there are millions of people that live in this country that don't know when they leave to go to work that they're coming home? We know we're coming home. And if the Republicans won't come to the table, the president said in his State of the Union address, you heard him. Now this is not what I prefer. And this is not what I've come to advocate for. I want to make that absolutely clear. But if the Republicans don't come to the table and allow the Republicans who have publicly announced their support for comprehensive immigration reform to work with Mike and Luis to get a bill to the president's desk, then ladies and gentlemen, I think the president, what the president say when we kept telling him, Mr. President, stop the deportation. There was a rally in Chicago. The co-founder of Crate and Barrel, I don't know if you have Crate and Barrel here, if they have it in Chicago. The co-founder of Crate and Barrel brought 2 children who lost their parents because of deportation. I said to myself, tú sabes, cuando los ricos están llevando los niños de los pobres y llorando por ellos, estamos en una buena situación para tener una victoria. ¿Ah? No, es verdad. A veces toma ese tipo de conexión. And she came and said, so I just want to say that if they don't do it, and they don't give us a vote, and they don't let democracy flourish, the president said he was in a State of the Union, he was going to take his pen and use the phone and the pen, then I think it's time for the president. Not now, but at the end of this summer, we don't have a bill. I think it's time for the president to say, you heard what he said. He said, that executive order for the Dreamers, that was based because and I'm going to tell you exactly what he said. He said, porque yo vi en los soñadores los mismos valores, because I saw in the Dreamers the same values que yo y mi esposa, that I and my wife inculcamos en nuestras hijas, inculcate in our daughters. He equated the undocumented youth of this country to his own children. He humanized them. Well, all we have to say, Mr. President, if we can't work it out with them and they won't let the will of the body, then it's time for you to take your pen and to allow those moms and dads to also have work permits so that they can live without fear of deportation with their dreamer children. Exactly. There are 4 million. No, it's time for them to take that kind of action. There are 4 to 5 million American citizen children, and they call them anchor babies because they're ugly people, so they have to use an ugly expression to denote children. They call them, there's 4 American citizen children whose parents are undocumented. The president should begin to expand it. There are 1.5 million petitions for visas approved, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, approved. 1.5 million visas approved Approved because an American citizen is sponsoring their wife. An American citizen is sponsoring their parents. An American citizen is sponsoring their children. Children sponsoring their parents. Approved. But because of this 3 and 10-year bar, they say, go back to Mexico, go back to Ireland, go back to Warsaw, go back to the Philippines. And when they go back, they say, stay here for 10 years before you can go back to your loved one. They've been approved. I say the president should simply parole them in place, which is a statute in law, and allow them to get their visas if the Congress of the United States. These are American citizens who have petitioned for their loved ones. And because of some act of Congress in 1996, oh, why don't they do it the right way? Because you destroyed all the right ways. You've closed them down. You've created this terrible, terrible tragedy that we live on. I was a little boy. A lot of you know this. I was a little boy in Chicago. My parents moved back to Puerto Rico when I was 15 years old. I remember I got on the airplane with them. That was like the last moment my dad and I just really saw eye to eye. You know, he smoked all the free cigarettes and I drank all the free soda. I couldn't have did before when the airlines were airlines. And I still remember, seriously, I still remember that he spoke to me in Spanish and I spoke to him in English. That we had the bilingual household, right? I understood his Spanish, he understood my English, and we got along just fine. And then when the plane got to Puerto Rico and landed, I said, oh, this tropical heat. I'd never felt it before. I was from Chicago. I was Puerto Rico, but I was from Chicago. I was out of West Side Story. And I got to tell you, I said, Papi, can I have some money for a Coca-Cola? And he said, estamos en Puerto Rico, aquí se habla español. We're in Puerto Rico, speak Spanish here, and I thought you could have let me in on this a little bit earlier. But you didn't say that to your mom and dad when I grew up. The kids say things, but we didn't say those things. And I went to school, and I remember matriculating, and the teacher me dijo, a ustedes que hablan español lo van a entender mejor. Y me dijo, ¿y tú? So I got up. He said, and what is your name? ¿Cómo tú te llamas? Y yo le dije, I said, what should I say? Gutierrez, Gutierrez? Every year the teacher changed the pronunciation of my name. So I said, well, let me pick the one I like the best. So I said, Luis Gutierrez. Notice Mike Thompson said Gutierrez. Mike Thompson. And then he said to me, he said, ¿Tú no tienes madre? And I didn't understand. He said, and don't you have a mother? And I thought, what's my mother got to do with it? And I said, see? He said, well, if you don't know your complete name, I don't know what the rules back in Chicago are like, but here you have to know your complete name if you're going to be in high school. It's a requirement. I went home crying. I was 15 years old. I didn't know. I was in like another world. It was Puerto Rico en el campo. So I went home and I asked my mom, I said, mira que si yo no tengo madre. And my mom said to me, she said, no, mira. Tu nombre es Luis Vicente Gutierrez Olmedo. So I said it a few times, in the mirror. Luis Vicente Gutierrez Olmedo. Luis Vicente Gutierrez Olmedo. I thought, o presenta, abogado, ingeniero, something, right? I thought I could be on a telenovela with it. You guys are all laughing because you know I'm telling you the truth. ¡Qué tremendo nombre! Tengo 15 años y por fin me han revelado mi nombre. Y es un nombre magnífico. So I went back to school the next day, y había una señorita en la esquina, and I walked up to her and I said, hola. Mi nombre es Luis Vicente Gutierrez Olmedo. ¿Y cómo tú te llamas? And what is your name? And she started waving frantically. That's what they call the teachers in Puerto Rico, mister. Mister. Sí, señorita. And she says, el gringo me está molestando. The gringo is bothering me. You say, what does that have to do with everything that I've told you here tonight? For me, it has the world to do with why I'm here tonight. I went back to Puerto Rico. And everywhere I went, people saw me as strange and different and foreign. And I was among my own people. I had Puerto Rico, I had a little button. I had Puerto Rico in my heart, but I didn't have it on my tongue. And I was rejected. And I want to tell you, just like you laughed here this evening, and I'm happy you did because it's funny to me. I laughed too. And I shared the experience. I want you just to think of what it was like when I was 15 years old in that classroom without a friend, and everybody was laughing just as loud and with the same energy that you left here tonight. How alone I felt, how just totally isolated I felt, and how hurt I felt. You know something? I see people who come to this country just like I was in that situation. You know, they don't dress like we do, they don't speak like we do, they look a little strange compared to us. We think we're all, we know everything, and they're a little different. And sometimes we think we're a little bit better than they are. But you know something? Somebody stepped forward and taught me how to speak Spanish. And somebody stepped forward and gave me a hug and said, it's going to be okay, Luis. Nosotros te vamos a aceptar. I go back now to that same hometown in San Sebastián del Pepino, and when I went back, 20 years later, elected as a member of Congress, hundreds of people received me in that town. Wow. Como un hijo, ¿verdad? De ese pueblo. Wow. Y yo soy puertorriqueño. Y quizá no había nadie que se levantara su voz por mí en aquella ocasión. Pero yo nunca me voy a olvidar de la necesidad que yo tenía que alguien se levantara su voz por mí en ese momento. Y por alguien vio en mí mi humanidad y vio en mí algo de valor. Yo estoy aquí platicando con ustedes esta noche. Y en agradecimiento a todos aquellos que aman a su prójimo como a sí mismo. And to all of those who love your neighbor as you love yourself. All of those who live that spirit, I come here to say to Sonoma, to Napa, and to my good friend, to say to Mike, thank you so much for allowing me. Mantengan el espíritu fuerte, vamos a ganar. If one thing doesn't happen or another, I'm going to be back here this fall. Hopefully, I'm coming back in the fall so that Mike and I can tell you how it is you sign up for legalization. If not, we're going to tell you how you sign up so you don't have to live in deportation. But one way or another, this thing has to give. Thank you so much for having me.